Hi, so welcome back to the podcast. And I'm thrilled today. I've got a guest with me. Her name is Monica Cox. She is an energetic, functional fertility coach and solver of fertility issues. Using the combination of functional diagnostic nutrition and subconscious empowerment, she supports women in finding the root cause of their fertility issues to become the conscious mama they were born to be. She dealt with she dealt with years of unexplained infertility, failed IVFs, and survived several miscarriages before becoming an IVF mom and getting pregnant naturally, even though the doctors said there was nothing she could do to improve her situation. So I am thrilled to have Monica here today because we're going to talk about fertility, but we're also going to talk about gaining peace with our hormones in general, which can help all of us in midlife, whether we're looking to carry a pregnancy or not. So thanks so much, Monica, for joining us here today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Debbie. I think this podcast is so needed as someone who is 43 myself in midlife, done having babies, kind of done with fertility the way we think about it. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I just encourage any of your listeners to go leave a review for this podcast because I know that that is so supportive to get this message out to other women like us who are here for this information.
I appreciate that. Yes, that's a great idea. So thank you, Monica, for suggesting that. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story and what inspired you to follow this path in your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal story. I know that a lot of us come with them. I was 27, I was fit and healthy, and just like a lot of women, maybe not yourself, but I'm almost certain that you know someone who is going through fertility issues, whether they're in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. And I felt really discouraged and I felt like I was doing everything right. I was being perfect. And it took me almost 6 years to see a positive pregnancy test, and that's with two failed IVFs. So I had a really long journey of piecing this together. And this was back in 2004. I know I can say that
Yes.
with confidence. No, that's when I got married. This was back in 2008. Not that
Okay.
much difference, but back in 2004, digital cameras weren't even a thing. Back in 2008, we didn't have amazing podcasts like this, that we could tap into. And so the struggle was real, and I just started piecing together bit by bit, um, coming off major failures, right?
Mm,
I think that's what a lot of us don't realize is that our failures, quote unquote, are really there to cascade us into our greatness. And where can we pick ourselves up from? And so after the first failed IVF, went down the rabbit hole of really true health and wellness. And I discovered um, that fertility is just not separate from the rest of your body.
mm.
Hormones are created in the gut, and that's just things that a lot of people don't know. And so they just look at their periods and our cycles as something that's inconvenient until we want to get pregnant, and then it's inconvenient because it's still coming. And um when I figured out that there's root causes to hormonal issues and dysregulation, and that's when the light bulb went off for me in regards to this is something I have to think of for longevity, not just for my fertility, but what is my health going to look like at 43, at 53, at 63? If I'm this quote unquote sick, which let me just say, I had nothing diagnosed, right? I didn't have thyroid issues. According to the doctor, I didn't have gut health issues. um, and so I was like, I'm going to be an older mom because I didn't have my first child until I was 35. I got pregnant naturally at 36. And I was like, this is going to be a lifestyle. This is going to be how I carry myself for the rest of my life. And I'm not going to do it perfectly either. because
Mm,
life is life. But where can I do my best to make sure that I am, my best friend, she had kids really young, so did my brother. And I always tease them that they're going to be grandmas and grandpas before my youngest graduates high school.
yeah.
And what's that going to look like for me? I'm going to be an older grandma. I want to be around for my grandchildren. So bringing in the food, the mental and emotional, the toxic environment became a bigger a bigger quest or journey than just having kids.
Mm,
And that's why I'm here today. And I work with women with fertility issues because we resonate so deeply, right? I really
yeah.
truly feel like having someone guide you through your journey that you're in the thick of, it's so much easier to have a woman who has been there, knows the feeling deep in her bones, how you are feeling, what you're going through. Um, but my information of what I share is is true health for every woman. And when I get women who are friends or people I meet and I tell them what I do and they're like, "Oh, well, my fertility, I don't need you." But yet they're not happy. They're carrying 20 extra pounds. They need birth control because they get cyst on their ovaries, or their periods all wonky. They're premenopausal and they're just all over the place. And I don't say anything
Mm,
obviously, but I'm like, well, yeah, my information is yes, to create a happy, healthy baby, but really, like you said in my intro, thank you for that, is to create conscious mamas. So we are moving into midlife and beyond happy, joyful, and healthy.
yeah. Yeah, that's so important. I don't think we think of it that way. We don't we sort of think of fertility, like you said, it is part of just it's all our hormones. It's all part, it's all together, it's all one, but we think of it as something so separate. But
Hmm.
it's interesting because it is, well, if it's affecting you with your fertility, chances are there's other things going on as well. So what was your journey like when you went through this? What are the things you discovered about
Yeah,
yourself and maybe that can obviously help others now?
yeah. The first thing I discovered was actually how sick I was. Um, I was high performance. I wasn't in hospital. I was going to the doctors a lot with, chronic issues like IBS and tonsillitis, even though I didn't have tonsils anymore. And I think a lot of people just function at such a lower level of brain health, gut health, hormonal health that they think it's normal. And
Mm,
because most of the people around them are functioning the same way, they're just like, this is just what it is. I'm just old, especially when we get into our 40s. I'm old. I hear it all the time. Well, I'm older. I'm like, I'm not older. Like I'm more fit and healthy than I was at 17, at 27, at
wow.
43 now. So that was the first thing I discovered what true health actually was. And the other thing that I discovered was, and this wasn't necessarily in my fertility journey, it was just more into motherhood and entrepreneurship. It was how insecure I was
Mm,
and how I didn't feel worthy of a lot of things. From I've been married for 21 years almost, so I've been I've been with my partner a really long time, but little things like romance, I realized I didn't feel worthy of that, so I never put it on him to say, "Hey, this is what I need from you," because I
mm,
didn't feel worthy of it. Um, so there was a lot of self-reflection, and what I call that right now is radical honesty.
mm.
You
I like
have
that.
to get really radical with yourself if you have things in your life that you are unhappy with, whether they be physically, financially, emotionally, you have to show up for yourself and ask yourself why. Because even if it's the other person's fault, what are you doing to them to be allowed to continue to show up in your field that way?
Yeah.
And that was a really hard slap in the face of when you realize that you control your reality. And a lot of it is subconscious patterning that we don't realize that we have, until we think we have everything that we want in life and we're still unhappy. And we have to ask ourselves why, and unpacking that for yourself and showing up for yourself in a way that might feel really cheesy, or uncomfortable. Especially for, we're, in our 40s, we're older millennials or young Gen Xers, right? We were raised by the boomers who were raised by the silent generation. This was not imprinted in our nervous system. And so your nervous system is the blueprint. And if you're looking outside of your at your reality and going, how did I get here? It's time to go inwards and really reparent, remother, relove, gain that self-worth, brick by brick, neuron by neuron. Um, and it's really, the magic is in the mundane. I spent
Mm.
many years constantly, and yes, this got me to where I am. I needed the information, but I think I spent a little bit longer than I needed reading the books, going to the yoga classes, doing the breath work, doing all the things, and then going home and being pissed off and being in victim mode because it's always me who has to do everything, right? And I think a lot of
Yes.
us moms feel that way, or older women, um, because there is truth in that.
Yeah.
I am not saying that I'm just making this up. There is truth in it.
There is truth, but there's responsibility in that too, right?
Yes.
How,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
How are we energetically showing up to that responsibility? And where
yeah.
could we be delegating and asking the people, especially our family members, to step up? Where
Mm.
have we allowed them to slack off for whatever reason? I know I grew up in an environment that was very much, uh, the man could do no wrong and all women are bitchs.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was a really hard lesson actually for my mother to hear, because she couldn't really understand. She sacrificed everything. She was, the hard worker, X, Y, and Z, how I could love my father unconditionally and hold her to such different standards. And when I started unpacking this for myself, I started questioning that too. Like, why? And it was like, well, mom, you always said your mom never loved you, and you held your father on this pedestal, and your mother was always down here. And because I now know that kids pick up everything energetically, it
Yeah.
goes even deeper than do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
It's
that just got
energetic.
imprinted on my nervous system. And then you just kept showing me that and showing me that. And then I started realizing it when became a mom, that I started doing that. And then I was like, no, absolutely not. We got to
Yeah.
stop this.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least you recognized it and understood that you had some control over that, which is what I think a lot of people don't get to that point
Yeah,
where they even look at it or even get to the point where they realize they actually can make different choices
exactly.
and think differently.
Hmm.
But I find that fascinating, and I just want you to maybe walk us through how you then work with people. So these are, I mean, you've come and become a lot more conscious of you and your life. And now how do you use that to work with women who are having fertility issues or who are trying to make peace, I guess, in a lot of cases, I'm assuming it's making peace with their bodies, with their hormones, with their lives.
Yeah, so it starts with a conversation.
Mm,
I let them tell me what they think is important: the
mm,
diet, the supplements, the IVF, all the things that you are important, don't get me wrong, but they have a hold of, they know. And
Yes.
so I let them just talk and let out what's heavy on their heart and how they're actually feeling. Because that's the key to shifting what we need to shift. You need to be radically honest with what you're truly feeling and allow yourself to express those things and feel those feelings. And so we have a conversation, and 100 times out of 100 right now, with every client that comes to me, whether it's a group coaching or a one-to-one, they always walk away and go, I didn't think we were going to talk about that. That's not what
Hmm.
I came here to talk about. And that's my job, and my gift is to be able to pull out where you need to focus. You don't think it has anything to do with your past, whether that be medical treatment. You know, I can almost guarantee every woman listening to this has had some kind of medical treatment that was invasive, whether it was I don't want to say like a joyous time, but nothing went wrong to maybe complications, especially with birth and all that. The body keeps score. There's trauma
Hmm.
there that we need to release because we are not taught as human beings to release that extra cortisol or that extra, trapped um, energy around an invasive procedure. So um, it's really just helping them see what is the heaviest thing on their heart right now, right? It might not be the biggest thing that you need to conquer in your journey, but where are you ready to give up a little bit of that, of like shedding, putting down your wall?
Hmm.
Because there might be this really heavy thing that you're not ready for, and I can't open that door for you. You have to be ready for that. So you're going to come with something smaller, but it's so important because that's going to crack open, and you're going to be able to be led eventually to cracking open something even bigger for yourself. So it's really important to, meet them where they're at
Yeah.
and get a sense of like, can I go there with them? Can I not?
Hmm.
Do we need to start somewhere else? I had when I was practicing my subconscious empowerment, I was doing with it with some friends who weren't dealing with fertility issues, and uh, uh, motherhood came up, and that was just too big, right? To say an affirmation or release emotion around, I'm not a good enough mother. We really had to crack down little steps before we could get to that big, because that's a big thing. And
Yeah.
usually it is created from many, many different reasons. And
Hmm.
so figuring out where we need to start. And that could be the same with diet and lifestyle. There's many women that I say to them, if you quit your job next week, your whole life would radically change. And they're like, nope, can't do it. Okay, well, then what can we do to help you during this phase then? Because I'm telling you, your job is keeping you stuck. But if you're not willing to let it go, then let's pivot somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, meeting them where they are, but seeing what they're ready for.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I love that idea of radical honesty. I think that is, first of all, refreshing because I don't think we live in a society that values radical honesty. And I think, yeah, we have to get radically honest with ourselves. Like, what is going on with us so that
Yeah.
we can actually get somewhere and not
It
just make a superficial change, make a real change.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because it's
Yeah.
all down to you, and that's the hardest part. And that's why I teach intuition, discernment, and empowerment so deeply. You have to go into situations empowered from your heart, from that
Mm.
intuitional space. Because if you don't, no matter who you work with, right? A good-hearted person or someone who just wants a paycheck or someone who is, you know, out in space, I don't know. You have to show up. You have to do the diet. You have to calm your stress levels. You have to be radically honest with yourself about your emotional state and what you're willing to look at and what you're not. And it's okay if you're not willing to look at it, just be honest with yourself.
Yes, just
You
be
know?
honest, you're not willing to
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And don't
Okay.
pretend
Yes.
otherwise.
Yes. And that's
You know.
okay. We're not all meant to just like, um, do all this emotional work and break free and oh, it's gonna be peace here on earth.
Yeah.
I know it's a cliche, but it's just a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you have to hit your rock bottom to make that
Mm.
radical change and take that responsibility. And so
Yeah.
just have grace for yourself, and the best piece of advice is that just keep that in the back of your head that you will eventually get there. I'll do it when I'm ready, and you'll eventually be ready and make those shifts. I look back at, let's say I've been on this journey since 2011 is when I really woke up. And that's a long time, we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about
It
15
is.
years.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning and I'm still willing to pivot. And it's okay that it's taking me this long to get to where I am. And it will be okay that it will take me another 15 years to get to where I am there. I'm okay with it being a long journey because the
Mm.
fact is let's just say we're all made of light, and you can only be as bright as your nervous system and as your frequency can allow. If you are at, let's say, a level 2 of dimness and you want to get to a level 12, if you went like that with the switch, think of like if you did that from 2 to 12, your eyes like jerk, your body would freak out. Like
Mm.
it's almost impossible for the physical body to hold that capacity from 2 to 12. So you have to take your time to get to each dimming switch. Sometimes you can jump one or two,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm.
we want this instant, gratification now, even though it's weird that none of us grew up in that, right? Like, I can see the younger kids being addicted to that because that's all that they know. And I literally find space for my kids to be bored. So their nervous systems aren't used to that. But it's very interesting. And even watching my mom, who's 67, be addicted to a phone, right? And how
Yeah.
we got addicted to these things. And, it's just time to come back to ourselves and be
Yeah.
graceful with the journey that we're on. And the, the more you can be consistent with the things you need to do, that creates the evidence of your future self, right?
Mm.
So, whatever your goal is in the long term, sometimes it's really hard to resonate with that right now. It seems unachievable. Maybe you have doctors telling you you can't or whatever. But the fact is that you get to choose in your belief system that you're going to live in. You're going to age. None of us are going to get out of that process. But how are you going to age? Are you going to choose to do it your way or the way that society has told you aging is? And it's a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. And we do have a lot more control than we think we do. So I
Absolutely.
think that's so important. So when we can get radically honest with ourselves and we can release some, because I imagine that that just takes a weight off, when you can start getting radically honest with yourself, that you're able to release some of what's you're holding on to, release
Hmm.
some, like you said, I assume, is that going to help us improve our gut health, improve our overall health? Like, how does that how does that work?
Yeah, so it works two different ways. Okay, so the first way is when you get radically honest with what's blocking you from sticking to the physical commitments that you want to stick to,
Mm.
right? Because we have to show up physically. As much as we're light and love and energy, we're still
Mm.
physical bodies. We live on a physical earth. We got to play that physical game. So if you know that you have specific things that are going to improve your gut health or your hormone health or that, and you're not sticking to them, that's the subconscious, right? You are just defaulting to the old patterns, the old belief systems, and not showing. It has nothing to do with willpower. So when you're radically honest with what's actually keeping you stuck from not showing up for yourself, and you clear that energetic block or that emotional block, then you're able to show up for yourself. Okay? So it works
Mm.
that way on the physical level. On an energetic level connected to the physical health, say you have anger, right? And you have anger because of your parents, of your kids, of your job, whatever it is, and you're holding on to that anger, it's going to disrupt the liver, it's going to disrupt the flow, and it's all connected. So if you're not detoxing properly, your hormones are going to get back to, like it's all just going to be a mess. So when you identify, like, okay, I'm really angry at X, Y, and Z, and it's actually not affecting them because they're dead or I don't work with them anymore or whatever, right? But it's affecting me. I'm
Yeah.
having physical issues now because I am so angry.
Mm-hmm.
When you are able to identify that anger, release it, bring in not only a different emotion, so how do you want to feel about it? And if it's something that is like truly devastating, right? We don't want to feel joyful about a devastating event, but we want to be at peace with it. We don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
angry with it. So we swap out the emotion, but the next level two is swapping out that energetic field around it, right? So identifying it in your body. Where do you feel it? What color is it? What sensation are you getting? And
Mm.
allowing it to sit with you and you sit with it. And then I know it sounds super simple because it is super simple. We've been led to believe everything has to be really hard. Um, it releases because you aren't giving that it any power anymore. You're willing to let it go. And you can get in a whole brain state, a theta state. This is why meditation is so supportive. It's because you naturally get into that theta state. You can do that super easily by doing figure eights, left to right, right to left, back and forth. You can do it by crossing the zones of your body because it's connected to your brain, taking deep breaths, connecting your heart to your mind, connecting your womb to your heart, and releasing this. And the more you practice, the easier it is to get into tune. Like when you know I practice this daily,
Mm.
and when I get triggered, or when I, like, even this morning, man, like, I it's the time of the month. People weren't doing what I wanted them to do, and I lost it. And then I had to like take myself out and go, gosh, man, this is not where we want to be. And I'm still regulating my nervous system, and I'm still coming home to myself. But I was able to very quickly connect my heart and my brain, reconnect, get there. I envision, white light coming into my body, whatever needs to be released, release, and bringing in that new frequency, bringing in that new emotion. And just the more that you do that, and you are just graceful
Mm.
with yourself, and you continue to show up for yourself that way, you won't get triggered as much anymore. Or it's easier for you to bring yourself down, say sorry for your behavior
Yeah.
to yourself, to whoever else that maybe you um, blew your lid, and move on in a better frequency. Where if I'm radically honest, I mean, things like that would have happened a year or two ago, and I would have sat in that energy for hours and
Yeah.
just spiraled down, and then looked up and go, why do I feel this way? Well, even though that person reacted like that, how did I react? Okay, I didn't really enjoy that. So let me change that for myself, and hopefully that person won't react that way again.
Yeah, no, and this, I mean, this rings true. A lot of the clients I see are holding on to a lot of resentment. So there's a
Yes.
lot of resentment because, like you mentioned before, my partner's not doing all the work. maybe
Yes.
some of the work around the house, or, my kids are so needy or whatever it is, but e- everybody wants a piece of them, and they're just feeling, because they're not saying no, and they're just doing, and just, not protecting themselves. They're feeling this resentment, and then they're carrying that around, and it's coloring everything, and including their health,
Absolutely.
right? And
It's
it's,
all
the
intertwined.
weight, it's all intertwined, right? It is energetic. And I see that, like, I see how that resentment can lead to something else. I mean, even me as a very young child, I was very nervous. What was probably anxiety, but they didn't call it that in the 70s. So I don't know. That was just a nervous child. And it caused me to be in the hospital several times with, like, GI problems, because
Yes.
I was so nervous. I was holding on to everything, right?
Yep. Hmm.
Emotionally and physically.
Hmm.
So that was huge. And that was a really interesting thing, because that always taught me how related our minds are to our bodies.
Yeah.
And that has always been stuck with me. Like, my mind caused my body to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It, for us, in midlife, we just didn't grow up with this information. I mean, I know the hippies knew, okay? The hippies were always right. But there wasn't the internet. You really couldn't go to the library and find a book that made sense and pieced it all together. It wasn't accessible. And so when we get to our 40s and we're like, we have to relearn everything.
Mm.
And I'm watching my mom do this in her 60s. I lived in this very crazy duality where my dad died last year at 68 because
Mm.
he did not start taking radical responsibility for himself. Kept patterning and patterning and not taking care of his health, and then he was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer throughout his whole entire body.
Wow.
And he looked at me because I've been in this health and wellness, and he said, I thought your body was supposed to give you symptoms. And my heart just broke for him because, I'm not going to go into a lecture with him, but I was like, God, Dad, yeah, I've been telling you for years this is a symptom, that's a symptom, but you just thought I'm old. This is what happens, running the same patterns. Where my mom slowly started doing different things for her when I changed in my fertility journey, and has even gone deeper. Like, she's doing breath work, she does the diet, she's, almost completely stopped drinking. And I say to her, every drink you don't have, that's one day less of dementia. Like, like, and she's breaking these patterns for her at 67. And
Wow.
that's huge,
Yeah.
a really big thing, because I found it hard at 30 and 40. So add 20, 30 more years to that. You just have so much to get through. And that's why it comes back to the grace. Just give yourself grace. You What you're going to find the hardest after you move through this journey, especially if you are older, is you are going to have to watch the people around you suffer,
Mm.
because you are doing the work to radically change your life on a cellular level, and the people around you aren't. And that is going to be the hardest part of your journey, is to watch them and not be able to do anything for them other than be the shining light, and just hope that they catch on to, hey, what are you doing? You look great. Well, I do this and that. I do that for me. And my mom is like, I do this breath work and it's clear and all this stuff I never knew I had. um, and you know, that is a gift that you can give yourself. And if you are, if you have children and if you have grandchildren, just to know, I keep telling my mom she's going to be the last survivor of all the grandparents. She's going to be the one to see my kids graduate,
Yeah.
where I
Wow.
don't, my dad is gone. He doesn't get to see all this now.
Yeah.
And so to have that in the back of your mind of, it's not tangible, it's really hard to see that future, but just know every day that you're showing up for yourself is one more day that you get to experience, the amazingness of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you've mentioned some ways we can do this, like you mentioned breath work and meditation. What are some other ways that we can release? I guess first of all, be aware of, that we've got things going on and then be able to let them go. And is there any
Yeah.
special
There
tools that like your top 5 tools of what we could
Oh
do?
my gosh, there's so many. And this is my top advice with this. You got to find something that you resonate with. What are
Mm,
you going to show up and consistently do? Because that's where you're going to see the radical change. So there's like eye rapid movement, there's emotional freedom tapping, there's subconscious empowerment, what I do, which is closely related to like Psych K. There's breath work, there's shamanic dancing. I know that my yoga studio started doing this thing called the Wild, and it was basically twerking at like 9 a.m. on a Friday. And I mean, I did it for over a year, but the first like 10 classes, I did not leave without crying. And I was like, this is crazy. So there's so many different ways to tap into the physical and the emotional body. It's really you being able to let your defenses down, do something that's a lot different than you're used to, and show up with an open heart.
mm,
That is how you're going to shift it. And it's just being consistent. I don't do nearly as much breath work as I used to because I don't feel, drawn to it as much anymore. So use a modality um, when it serves you. And then if you kind of fall out of love with it or you don't feel in tune, go find something else. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I think the reason I don't do all the tapping or the breath work or even the dancing is because I cleared a lot. Like a lot came
yeah.
out. And I was willing, I would say to my girlfriends, I wouldn't even dance like this drunk in a club, in a dark club at in midnight, with people I'll never ever see again. But here I am doing this with women I'll see in Target sober. So it's really letting your defenses down, finding something that you deeply connect with, and know
Mm,
that you have to show up and do the work, right? So things that like reflexology, acupuncture, um, those are all really amazing modalities. But I would say you need to go a little bit deeper with the energy work to really release it. And that's why you have to have that radical honesty because,
yeah.
doing acupuncture, super supportive, but it was invented during a time where Western problems didn't exist. Right. So they
Interesting. Yeah.
used they used it during a time for just supportive of health, of moving as a community, as a village. There weren't these Western problems to solve with
Mm,
acupuncture or reflexology. So they're very supportive, but just keep in mind that if you find it a little bit too easy and you don't really see yourself shifting in any modality, it's time
yeah.
to go find something that's going to push you a little bit more.
Is it because they're kind of passive? I mean, you're just lying there and then
Yeah.
somebody else is doing the work, right? So
Yeah.
it's more like you need to be involved.
You need to be
And
involved.
yeah.
So
Okay.
even when I do my subconscious empowerment, I can literally almost tell you word for word what you need to say, but I need you to say it. I
Mm,
need you to come up with the emotion, with the phrase, with what's going on, because then that clicks in your subconscious,
yeah.
right? And then you're able to really truly feel it yourself. And with Reiki and things like that too, what a lot of people, so like Reiki, reflexology, and acupuncture are good modalities. Someone's moving energy in your body. That's what's happening, right? When we do subconscious empowerment, that's happening too. Um, you're doing more of it than someone who, let's say, is doing Reiki. But the missing piece for these modalities is that they don't give you the physical actions to now wire in that subconscious belief. So you can change something energetically, but if you don't continuously show up for yourself in this physical world, you can get sucked right back into that old energetic field. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It does. You have to keep doing the work. You have to keep showing up, like you said.
Yeah, it's like brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
Because people are like, "How long do I have to do this?" It's like, "Well, how long do you have to brush your teeth?"
Yeah.
Like, until you die. And sometimes you get a deep dental clean, and some days you just floss, like, you don't have to be perfect with it, but you have to take care of this. How much do you have to eat every day? Yes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it, it's the same thing. And it just is
So,
so overwhelming at the beginning because it's so new. So that's why I say
mhm.
give yourself the grace.
Yeah, because I imagine you're working with people who've never done this kind of work before. And like you said, they're not even coming to you thinking that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, so this is like brand new for people and making that link between, I guess, they're getting their fertility back by doing this work on themselves, which they didn't even know they needed.
Yeah. Well, the thing is fertility is innate. We
Mhm.
we think we've lost something, and that is not true at all.
Mm.
Your drunk cousin has proved to you that you don't have to overthink fertility, right? Your period shows up, even when you are really sick. I didn't have irregular periods. That wasn't an issue for me. So that's why I got thrown in the unexplained box.
Mm.
Um, so eh, the thing with your hormone system and your endocrine system, your gut health, your brain, your flow, your everything, it's innate. Your body knows exactly what to do. What's not given, what is not innate is cellular health.
Mm.
You have to show up in a way in the society, which is hard. It's a very challenging society. Our ancestors were worried about famine. We're worried about too much. I just went to the grocery store to get some peanut butter for my kids, and I was just looking at, and this Japanese store in Hawaii, and a lot of our brains is like, oh well, they're so much healthier than us, so all their foods are going to be. And I'm just looking at, they got a lot of American products, and I picked up this applesauce, and it had corn syrup in it. And it's just like, why are we putting corn syrup in freaking applesauce? Like, there's no need.
Yeah.
But so we have to overthink a lot more things than our ancestors did, in regards to how to eat healthy, how to have a stress-free life. Their stress was real too. You know, it,
Mhm.
where was their next meal going to come? But it didn't necessarily put them in the stress that we are constantly in.
Yeah,
And so
that's
if
the
you can
difference.
just get back to that innateness of all I need to do is take care of my cellular health, and that is through stress reduction, a clean diet that works for me, and getting rid of all my BS that I didn't realize I had. A lot of us are born with luggage. Like you get born and then they give you two big bags of suitcases before
Mhm.
before your 10th birthday. And you're like,
Wow.
Jesus, man. And yes, it's you. You get to unpack it. And
Yeah.
really, I say you now have that privilege because especially for the older women listening, your mother couldn't do it. She lived in a time where it was very different to now. And
Mhm.
so there was a lot of women that felt so stuck. Now, if that necessarily wasn't the whole reality, but that was more of a collective reality, you know. In the 70s, women couldn't even get a credit card,
No, no,
you
that's
know?
it. Yeah, things were
So
very different.
we now live in a time that to do these things for us is accessible, doable. And the cool thing is when you start doing this for yourself, it energetically cascades out to uh, everyone who you are connected to on a genetic level, but also your community, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's why it's so powerful because it does affect everyone. So I know we're getting to the end of our time, but I do want to ask you, which is a question I ask all my guests, is what is the best part of getting older for you? And you're not one of my oldest guests, so this is interesting. I 43-year-old perspective on it, which is great.
Yeah, just wisdom.
Mm.
the wisdom that you get with age. And I'm not going to wait to my 60s to have that 60s wisdom. I know it comes with age, but I'm going to empower. I look at women in their 60s and 70 now. I have a woman at my gym who's 73 lifting weights, and I am taking on their wisdom and giving less cares about what people think, how people think I should move, how people think I should be, and just showing up in more of an authentic way. My husband has a 95-year-old grandmother, and some of the things she says, I'm here for it. I'm just like, that like,
She doesn't
it's
care anymore.
she
She
doesn't
just
care
lets it
anymore.
go.
She
Yeah.
just lets it go. And I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of like awareness that isn't there anymore. But if we can do that in a kind way, obviously, not
Hmm.
in a mean way, I think the world would be a better place. Like, we literally, I don't know if you do, I literally pay people to call me out on my BS.
Yeah. That's what
Where,
people pay a coach
right?
for.
It's like, tell me now. I don't want to have to learn 5 different lessons to get it. I don't want to be in my 50s and realize what I can realize in my 40s. You
Yeah.
know, the friend that really speared on our health journey, he's about a decade older than us. And he was like, I'm so jealous that you guys got to learn this in your 30s. I wish I would have known this earlier. And so that's, the part about getting older is we do gain this wisdom. But also, I think that the more consciousness that you can gain, you can draw from the elders and start applying that to your life now. I'm not,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm not going to wait to my 50s to act like a 50-year-old who just has embraced life and embraced herself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. It's so true too. Just like we can have that wisdom now. We don't have to wait until we get old to
Ex-
then apply any of this. We can apply it now and use it now
Absolutely.
and make our lives better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so good. So, I love this conversation. I really appreciate that you being here, Monica. This is something refreshing. It's something different, and so I really, really enjoyed it. And I want my audience to be able to reach out to you. So, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm finding fertility everywhere. I do talk a lot about fertility stuff, but just know that it is applies to everything, especially if you're really into this radical responsibility and taking control of your life. Um, and I know that everyone knows someone dealing with fertility issues. So if they want to share this podcast with their friends or their daughter or their, cousin, whoever it is, I would be forever grateful. I know this doesn't land for everyone. This is a very, I don't want to say advanced, but a next level conversation. You got to be ready to really look inwards. But for anyone who would, if this resonates with them, they can personally email me or DM me on their favorite social media platform with the word dreams. And I give you what I give
Mm.
my one-to-one clients, and that is a free consultation, um, and a sneak peek into what's really going on with you. What are those hidden blocks, right? Get ready to show up and leave with a little bit like, how did she know that about me? But
Wow.
yeah, so it's a really amazing session. And if anyone's interested, just email me or DM me. And my email is monica@findingfertility.co.
Oh, that's such a gift. Well, thank you, Monica. That is so generous. And I will put all that information in the show notes so anybody who's listening can reach out to you and hopefully take advantage of speaking to you as well. I think that would be so interesting.
It is.
Good. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here today. I loved having you on.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.